review these charts for the quiz on Friday and for the test. So first let's review what we had on last quiz. Let's review the seed.
Seed coat, baby plant, store food.
Alright, now this will be on the quiz on Friday. We will label the parts of this plant. This is the
Flower.
this is the
Leaf.
this is the
Stem.
and this is the root. Wait till I point you, please. Alright, so that's be very easy. And then this will be on next week's test. Alright, so the process of photosynthesis is the process by which a plant makes food. The leaf makes food for the plant. And there are 4 things needed for that to happen. One is
Sunlight.
and then in the leaf,
Chlorophyll.
this is
Carbon
carbon dioxide, and this is water.
dioxide.
One more time.
Sunlight. Chlorophyll. Carbon dioxide. Water.
Alright. Let's start reading on page 126 in your books. And we will start with the terms to remember. Organism. Say that with me, please.
Organism.
A living thing. So it's just another word for any living thing. So you would be an organism, right? Because you're a living thing. Decomposer. An organism that helps to break down dead things. Fungi and bacteria. It's plant-like organisms that cannot make their own food because they do not have chlorophyll. Alright, so remember chlorophyll is the green matter in plants, in the leaf of a plant. Well, these don't have it. Spore, single cell that is able to reproduce living organisms. So far we've been talking about flowering plants that make seeds. We're going to talk about some plants that don't make seeds. They have spores. Alright? Decomposers of the forest. The next time you take a walk in the forest, look down at the leaves beneath your feet. You might think you are only standing on dead leaves. You're not. You are standing on thousands of living things or organisms at work. Many tiny insects and worms break down decaying dead things, like the leaves on the ground. As they digest dead things, they are making nutrient-rich humus for the soil. We call these kinds of animals decomposers. Other living things are also decomposers. These are not green plants, but they are plant-like organisms called fungi and bacteria. Fungi do not grow from seeds. They grow from spores that float through the air. A spore is a single cell that is able to reproduce organisms such as green plants and plant-like living things. Fungi and most bacteria do not have chlorophyll like green plants do. That means they cannot make their own food. They must get their food from another source. This is why some kinds of fungi and bacteria live on dead things. Unlike a seed, a spore does not have a baby plant or stored food inside it. A spore can only grow if it falls in a moist, shady place where it can get food and air. What happens next? Bacteria and fungi work together to break down and decompose dead leaves. Nutrients are returned to the soil for living green plants to use. Alright, so they show you a decomposer right there on that page. You guys are very familiar with this creature. What is it? A pill bug. Alright, how many of you know the pill bug? You found the pill bug while you're out playing and it rolled up in a little ball. That's why they're called a pill bug. Raise your hand if you've never seen pill bugs before. Oh, you know what? Sometimes people find pill bugs in the mulch underneath the benches.
Underneath walls.
Because they are decomposers. They are breaking down that mulch to make it into humus for the soil. Alright, so that is a pill bug and it can roll up into a little ball to protect itself, and it is a decomposer. It breaks down dead plant material. Think of the millions of leaves. Top of the next page, please. Please put your foot down and get close enough to your book so you can actually see what I'm reading. No, that's not how we get close. We move our chair close. Move your chair. Thank you. Think of the millions of leaves that fall from the trees each autumn. We can be thankful for tiny worms, insects, fungi, and bacteria that break them down. Can you imagine how tall the leaves would get if they didn't get broken down by these decomposers? You wouldn't even be able to walk through the woods anymore, would you? Because it would be so full of leaves. Decomposers are God's way of recycling and cleaning our world. Without them, dead leaves would eventually cover the tops of the trees. There would be no forest life at all if it were not for decomposers. All right, they are talking about taking some leaves, and this is a good time to do this, when it's not too cold and the leaves are on the ground, and see if you can find some decomposers in them. This is one I'm gonna let you do on your own, just like I suggested some of you bring in leaves from your trees, and so we can look at them. You can see if you can get some leaves and try to shake out the decomposers that might be hiding in them. So look for these pill bugs, look for other creatures, and you can bring them in a jar to show us the decomposers you found. All right, turn the page. We're going to talk about some of these fungi and bacteria. All right, terms to remember. Ferns, read them with me. Ferns and mosses. Green plants which begin as a spore instead of a seed. Spore case, a case of many spores. All right, so some of the plants that grow from spores are what we're going to study next. So one of them would be ferns, and another one would be mosses. So let's talk about ferns and mosses. The forest floor is also home to ferns and mosses. These green plants do not have flowers or cones as they cannot make seeds. They reproduce using spores instead. All right, so this is a type of fern right here, and do you see those little brown things on the back of the leaf? Yeah. Those would be spores. Actually, they are spore cases, so actually they are filled with hundreds of spores. And then that other fern that you see in the picture, that one actually usually has little black spore cases on the back of it. All right? Are you on the right page?
Yeah.
Why? All right. Your eyes could not see one little fern spore all by itself. It is only one tiny cell. However, you can see a group of fern spores. Look on the back of a fern leaf. You will see spore cases. Each spore case contains hundreds of spores. So that what you see right there, that is not one spore. That is hundreds of spores in each one of those little dots. One day the cases will burst open. The spores will float through the air to a new home. If a spore falls in a moist, shady place where it can get food and air, it will grow. What do you think its food will be?
Its food will be the minerals in the earth.
No.
The mulch.
The mulch, the dead and dying leaves, okay? It has to land somewhere where it's moist and where there's something to eat. Remember, it's going to feed off of dead things like dead leaves, a dead tree, right? If that spore were to float through the air and float right in that door and land right here, would it start growing?
No.
No, because there's no food for it. It's not moist, there's no food.
There's no
There has to be food for it. Go to the top of the next page and let's talk about moss. Mosses. Moss is often called a soil builder. Moss needs very little soil to grow in, but its tiny roots are constantly at work. The roots break off tiny bits of rock to form more soil. The little roots then protect the soil from erosion. Now, I've noticed several times when we walk over to the gym for PE that there is actually moss growing in the cracks between the pieces of the sidewalk. How many of you ever noticed that? Right? And this is another thing that you could bring in if you can find some moss at home, and you can break off a chunk and put it in a sandwich bag and bring it to show the class. So once somebody's brought it in, we don't need anybody else to bring it in, but whoever brings it in first, then we will let everybody in the class look at it. All right, do all green plants grow from seeds?
No.
Because we just learned about ferns and mosses that grow from spores. So do ferns and mosses have flowers? No, because they don't need to make seeds. They grow from spores. All right, so we will look at moss when somebody brings it in. All right, turn the page. We're going to talk about fungi. Fungi plants that grow from spores. Mushrooms and toadstools are not green plants. They are plant-like fungi which grow from spores. They grow very well in the dark, shady forest. Right? So when it's very, very wet, they can grow. And one year we had a really moist fall where there was lots of rain and there were lots of mushrooms. So this next experiment they're talking about is where you break off the cap of the mushroom and you lay it on a white paper and then you cover it with a bowl or something overnight and it will make it release the spore cases. So this is what it ends up looking like. So this was 3 mushrooms that somebody put on a paper towel and then covered it with a bowl and overnight, and it made it release the spore cases on the paper towel and it left this design. So if somebody wants to do that, you can also try that experiment if you can find mushrooms, but they're harder to find when it's not too moist. Top of the next page. The plant world is a picture of God's continual love and provision. His love and care for us never stops. The plant world is continually replenishing itself because of God's wise design. Whether it is air to breathe or food to eat, God supplies our every need. Read the verse with me. But my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus. Philippians 4:19. What do we call the worms, insects, bacteria, and fungi that break down dead plants to help return nutrients to the soil? Raise your hand. We just learned them today. Yes, Adam?
Fungi.
That is one of them, but what do you call them all together? Those insects, mushrooms, decomposers. Very good, decomposers. Instead of growing from seeds, where do ferns and mosses what do ferns and mosses begin as? They don't begin as from seeds, they begin from spores. Spores, very good. Where can you find the spores of a fern plant? If you want to find the spores, where you can look?
Mulch.
Did you even hear what I asked you? I asked, where do you find the spores on a fern plant?
It's on the back.
On the back, you turn it over. You turn the leaf over and look on the back of the leaves. All right, circle the living things that grow from a spore. So would an apple tree grow from a spore?
No.
Mushrooms?
Yes.
Tomato plant?
No.
Pine tree?
Yes.
That would be a no. Pine trees do not grow from spores. Pine trees have cones which have seeds in them, sort of like flour. So the pine cones are like the pine tree's flower. Rose?
No.
Moss?
Yes.
Wheat?
Yes. No. Wait, does wheat have seed?
Wheat is the seed.
What?
That is the seed.
I didn't realize.
Fern.
Yes.
All right. Now we're going to label it for you. You're not really going to draw lines. You're going to go with your finger. So what is the bark? That would be the outside. And the white wood would be the sapwood. And the darker wood on the inside would be the heartwood. Just remember, the heartwood is in the very center. And your heart is in the center of you. Heartwood. And then the lighter wood is sapwood. And then the outside is the bark to protect it. All right, we just finished that up. Let's review for that quiz. The quiz will be on Friday. What is a forest that grows where there's much rain?
Temperate.
Much rain.
Rainforest.
According to our book, they didn't call it the rainforest. It is a tropical rainforest. So you're right and he's right together. Tropical rainforest. What are the circles in the wood of the tree trunk that show a year's growth? What are those called? Paige? Not yearly. It means yearly, but it's another word that means yearly. Maya? Annual rings. Annual rings. What is a forest growing where there's 4 seasons? Jonathan?
Temperate forest.
Yeah, that's the temperate forest where there are 4 seasons. Please just shut your books. Don't put them away. Some of you already did put them away, and you were making a lot of noise when I was trying to read. But I do want you to shut your books and just leave them there. I said, please shut your books and leave them alone on your desk. Okay, I'm gonna write you up for not obeying me right away. You're wasting my time whenever you don't do what I've asked you right away. What are the darker rings of wood at the center of the tree? Heartwood. What is a forest that contains many needled trees that bear cones? Abby? They are evergreens, but that's not what you call a forest. Yes? What? I didn't hear what you said. Yeah, so there was a type of forest. All those needled trees are called certain thing. It has to do with what you find on them.
Pine cones?
There are pine cones on them, so these trees are called. Yes, Paige?
The pine forest.
No, it has to do with the cone. It's a word that has cone in it.
Conifer.
Conifer. The conifer. Remember the conifer forest? See the word cone is in conifer? What is the protective skin of the tree trunk?
Bark.
Bark. Very good. What is an insect or a worm that breaks down decaying dead things? Decomposer. Very good. Some of you are not paying attention. Ferns and mosses are green plants that begin as a spore. Very good. What is the part of the flowering plant that holds and protects the seed? Fruit. Very good. Maple tree is dormant in the winter. Very good. Does more or less sunlight in the fall make the leaves' veins become blocked?
Less.
Less. Very good. Less sunlight, and that's when the leaves change colors. All right, then I already told you you need to know the part of the flowering plant, which is very easy.